Okay, today is a doozy. In a one-sentence recap of last episode, Naruto went to see Minato to face consequences of fighting a fellow ninja, and instead both learned of a border dispute with the Land of Stone. As you can see in the referred map, there is actually a little country between both great nations. The Land of Grass is war-torn only because of where it's situated. This nation has actually chosen not to take sides and actively remains passive. As a result of the news, and due to the rules of wartime, all active missions are suspended in place of war missions. All the Genin teams are reassigned to provide assistance to the various Chunin and Jonin teams that are mobilizing at the border, just in case the worst was to happen. Team Guy is sent as an escort to a supply caravan heading to a forward outpost in construction. This is on a primary road from Konoha, so the danger for this team is nil. Their pace is so lackadaisical that Guy is afforded time to properly train them. Having borrowed the contract from Kakashi, Guy asks Kiba if he would like to officially sign a contract with the ninja dogs. Kiba quickly agrees and puts his mark on the contract. For the trip, Kiba then experiments with the chakra required to summon the dogs. He also tries to figure out how many he can summon at once, and whether he can summon specific dogs from his side of the summoning. Given his strong chakra reserves, performing this experiment multiple times in a row doesn't really slow him down. He also enjoys several conversations with the dogs, almost all of whom already know him. It's a match made in heaven and automatically makes Kiba the best sensor ninja of the Konoha 12 in this moment. With so many dogs running around, Guy also gets Ino to practice her mind transfer jutsu into animals, after the ninja dogs have agreed to the possession. Ino expresses frustration that they're training while there could be a war breaking out any second now. Guy empathizes with her fears but reinforces that if they remain focused on just their task for now, then they needn't worry about elsewhere. As long as they're performing their given task properly, then they're doing exactly as much as is required. So she practices her mind transfer from atop one of the caravan's wagons so her unconscious body isn't left in the dust. Over time, she understands the basic requirements and mechanical difficulties of controlling different species. Guy then tells her to start aiming for birds overhead and squirrels in nearby trees to see how far she can throw the jutsu and how fast she can as well. He gives Rock Lee the weights he's been designing for Rock Lee's size that are meant to be clasped around his calves. These weights are quite minor compared to Kennen, as Lee hasn't trained with them at all yet, and needs to get used to them first. Additionally, Might Guy spars with him on the grounds that Lee learns how to incorporate multiple stances at once. Currently, Lee shifts into the wolf stance and fights for time until allies arrive, as the stance demands. Guy suggests that in the midst of the wolf stance, Lee should learn how to read the situation so he can shift on the spot to the fox stance and turn the enemy's actions against them. While it's good to have a masterful understanding of the stances and when to use them, shifting between them in the midst of combat is a basic expectation of Chunin level ninja. The very outpost that Team Guy is heading for is where Team Asuma already is, helping to build it. This particular outpost is very close to the Borderlands. Though she tries to, Asuma does not allow Hinata to lend support to the workers, instead making her do the hard labor as well. Continuing their training from their first mission, he's having all three climb walls with their feet. In this way, they're also carrying supplies to higher levels to empower their chakra output and control. During their trip back from the Land of Hot Water, Asuma and Kurenai properly taught the Genin how to climb trees and the basics of walking on water. Nevertheless, a few ninja were still having struggles with it. Tenten and Naruto, in Asuma's case, still had struggles with multitasking climbing a wall while carrying supplies. Hinata has this particular talent mastered, but lacks the confidence to work as fast or hard as Tenten and Naruto. Scratching his head, Asuma wonders how he can get Hinata to come out of her shell. Tenten is shining here. With her complex understanding of weaponry, she's putting that knowledge to use with nailing in boards at a wicked pace. I can just imagine her throwing the nails like shuriken and pinning them exactly where they need to go. Naruto is also attempting to impress, well, no one in this case, as he attempts to scale walls with absurd amounts of supplies. Of course, he does this to the extent that he begins to annoy the construction workers around him. Asuma stands as a point guard looking toward the border. They're not so far that he can't see anything. but it would likely still take a half hour to get there at a brisk pace. It's a relatively clear day with random peppering of clouds in the sky. Above the forest that would otherwise be in the land of grass, Asuma thinks he sees a small tendril of smoke and assumes they've set up a camp. This could mean they're relaxing a little bit, good news all around. It could also mean that reinforcements have arrived and are using this time to energize before more trouble comes. Asuma ignites a cigarette in quiet contemplation as he wonders whether there'd ever be peace. Team Kurenai has been posted at the borderline to offer reinforcement so that the Chunin and Jonin present can rest. They are to patrol along the border not for defensive or offensive means themselves. Rather, their objective is simply to grant reprieve to the Leaf Shinobi who've been on high alert since tensions rose. They are to offer 2 hours of rest to each squad before moving on to the next. After every 5 teams, Team Kurenai is to rest themselves before resetting and continuing this objective back and forth along the region. Knowing that her ninja need to remain full of energy for any perceivable threat, Kurenai's limited in the training she can give them. She asks Shino if his bugs can communicate and cooperate with other bugs that aren't part of his body hive. Shino says that it's generally unreliable to do so. Wild bugs don't have any compatibility with chakra and are often territorial. His bugs are vastly superior to wild bugs anyway, so he doesn't have to rely on an addition of wild bugs. Kurenai understands his logic but asks as well how he expands the diversity of species he has. She tells him that there are ninja from his own clan's history that had bugs that were able to eat iron and render any weapon useless. She asks him to keep an open mind because perhaps he can assimilate rare species that come from the wilds. Sakura has used every available opportunity during this time to sink into the genjutsu book that Tsunade had given her. She's currently on the chapter of sound-based genjutsu. During her reading of the chapter, Kurenai has given her a small flute, small like an ocarina, that she can use to facilitate the genjutsu in her practice. She asks Kurenai if one has to know how to play an instrument in order to perform genjutsu with it. Kurenai tells her that while the tune itself isn't essential to sound genjutsu, having that proficiency certainly enhances its ability. It's generally easier for ninja to learn instruments anyway, given how much muscle memory they're used to training and how important form is to their existing techniques. Sakura then asks Kurenai if she can just use her voice as the catalyst for sound genjutsu. Kurenai chuckles softly and says no, otherwise no one would use instruments. Strictly speaking though, it's not impossible. It's simply extremely challenging. She cites Lord Jiraiya as a ninja who can use his voice to create a genjutsu. However, she can't think of any other Leaf Shinobi who can do that. Pulling in Choji, she tells Sakura to hone her basic understanding of genjutsu. A good way to do this is to teach another how to use it. Sakura is to teach Choji what she knows of genjutsu and see how well he'd then be able to use it. Additionally, this will further Choji's expansion of jutsu. In a perfect world, Kurenai wants Choji to be equally capable with all 3 jutsu schools. This would give him a greater variety of weapons and tools to protect the other 2. His ninjutsu is pretty good and his taijutsu is a bit better, but she's yet to see him even use a genjutsu. Team Kakashi has been sent direct from Lady Tsunade with an essential message to be delivered to the Leaf Shinobi in charge of the border. Upon arrival, the head jonin of the border patrol, Genma Shiranui, unfurls the letter and sighs. As a side note, I've never seen his last name before, so hopefully that was pronounced correctly. The message are orders to back down and surrender the line. Genma tells Kakashi that the hostilities began when word reached them of Hanabi Hyuga's capture and both sides started shouting accusations at each other. There were grass ninja present up until the accusations started, and then they withdrew to stay out of the complications. Accusations were also thrown at the absent Cloud and Mist. It has led to this moment that both sides are now daring each other to throw the first stone. So close to real enemies, Neji has activated his Byakugan and cites that the stone ninja don't seem to be hiding their numbers. Beyond the edge of the woods that they can all see, Neji tells them that there are no additional ninja in hiding. Shikamaru wonders why the Jonin would all show themselves and not use deception to hide their numbers. Kakashi reminds Shikamaru that both sides are war-weary. Neither want a war, but the tension forces them to it. They're showing their numbers in a desperate hope that the other side will simply back off, and thankfully that's Tsunade's orders. They're to back off not because they're inferior in combat strength, but to prevent a spark of further war and loss of life. Meanwhile, Minato has found himself in Orochimaru's lab outside the village. This is one of few allied locations where Minato doesn't have a kunai planted for easy access. Orochimaru is so secretive that he has specifically requested that Minato doesn't leave one there. However, this doesn't bar the Hokage from entering the premises through normal means. Confronting Orochimaru mid-experiment, Minato asks him who exactly he encountered in the Land of Wind. Evasive with his answers, Orochimaru tries to change the topic and asks why Minato isn't at the border dispute. Minato tells him that between Hanabi's capture by equally unknown ninja and now this border dispute for that very same issue, he needs to be absolutely sure that Orochimaru hasn't compromised the village. Bristling, Orochimaru is insulted by the accusation of wrongdoing. He tells Minato that this Hokage can't afford to lose the power offered by Orochimaru's cooperation, so he shouldn't risk pushing the envelope. Firmly, Minato tells him that this Hokage is stronger than the third that Orochimaru feared. No Sannin can trick Minato into thinking their strength is a make-or-break peacekeeping tool. Sighing like hissing, Orochimaru backs off and calms down. He tells Minato that the incident in the Land of Wind is not at all related to Hanabi, as the description for both groups only share similarity in their anonymity. Minato tells Orochimaru that there is someone who could probably shed light on their little mystery. However, as Hokage, it would be inappropriate and compromising for him to reach out to that person. Orochimaru agrees to the task, but reminds Minato that the lengths he needs to go to find this mysterious individual could take some time. Nodding, Minato agrees to it. While his genin are taking a break, Asuma asks Hinata if she can see where the smoke is coming from with her Byakugan. She shrugs with uncertainty. Asuma tells her that perhaps she's using the Byakugan incorrectly. When she activates it, she can see the whole world in every direction. She can even see through solid objects with it, which can make depth seemingly impossible to determine. She nods in agreement and tells him that's exactly why it's so difficult to properly use. Hinata often can't tell if she's looking at something 50 feet away or 100. Asuma tells her to focus it. Just like with normal vision, you can focus on a nail in your hand, and though you can still see everything else in your peripheral vision, you are not even thinking about everything else. He tells her that the Byakugan is just the very same. Asuma doesn't have intimate knowledge of the Byakugan like a Hyuga would, but it's a very well-known dojutsu in the village. He's merely drawing on what he does know. He tells her that she can still focus on one small point, she simply has more peripheral vision to zone out of. Asuma holds up both his hands, his right hand hidden behind the left. He surges the fire element into his right hand and the wind element into his left hand. He asks her what type of chakra he's channeled into his right hand, the hidden hand. At first, she shakes her head, unable to see anything, telling him that the wind element is masking the other chakra type completely. And so he tells her to focus as hard as she can on just his hands. Forget about the world that's happening around her. There's no threat here. She doesn't have to pay attention to anything else. It's just her and him alone on a hill in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing else to see. Squinting and furrowing her brow, Hinata stares hard at Asuma's hands. He tells her that depth doesn't matter. Whether the target's a mile away or a foot away is unimportant, as long as Hinata can identify what it is. He tells her that Neji is a genius because he doesn't seem to have peripheral vision. For Neji, everything has complete clarity. But Hinata doesn't have to be what Neji is. As long as she can help Asuma, Tenten, and Naruto, they'll be happy with her. He tells her to relax, take a deep breath, and try just one more time. And so she does. She deactivates her Byakugan, rubs her eyes, and takes one long breath. She stares at the back of his hand and activates her Byakugan. As if it just took restarting, she exclaims excitedly that she can see the fire. She says that she can see the fire and the wind together, reaching forward and grabbing Asuma's hand, almost forgetting that it was so close. He smiles at her and congratulates the astounding progress. Dispelling the chakra in his hands, Asuma turns Hinata and points her towards the border and tells her to focus on the smoke. No hesitation, Hinata tells him she can see a fire. Beside it, there are ninja fighting. She can't tell how many. Asuma's smile dissolves as he worries that real conflict has begun again. As he stares with her, a sudden silent ball of fire grows out from within the trees and up into the sky. Like a bubble, it bursts and fire rains all around. Asuma can see the trees wafting in unison as the shockwave erupts outward. Yelling for his team to plug their ears, Asuma does the same as they're hit by the delayed sound of the explosion. Rest time's over. He tells Hinata to let her Byakugan rest, for they're joining their comrades at the border. A red flare in the distance alerts Team Guy to the potential of war, and just like with Asuma, Guy mobilizes his genin. He tells Kiba to share food pills with everyone so they can join their allies at the battlefront as soon as possible. Guy asks for one ninja hound to stick around so they can communicate any additional information while they run ahead of the caravan. Ino asks if they should abandon the guard detail even now, considering its supplies are meant to bolster defenses. Might Guy tells her that if the Stone Ninja have reached this far into the Land of Fire undeterred, then protecting a caravan should be the least of their worries. He reminds her that Team 10 was assigned this task as a punishment for doing so poorly on their last mission. This task wasn't created because they needed guards, but because the team needed more work. However, when there's an emergency, they need to all be willing to drop what they're doing to help. He also reminds her that just a few hours previous, she was complaining that what they were doing felt like a waste of time. Making sure they're with him, Might Guy takes off along the road to expedite their journey. Climbing to his feet, Choji looks around at his fellow genin, who were also knocked over by the sudden blast. As he kneels to help Sakura up, he wonders what knocked them down in the first place. The distinct sounds of ringing metal catch his attention first as he looks toward the border to see dozens of Leaf and Stone Ninja clashing. And that's the end of today's episode. I hope it wasn't too hard to follow, as I did jump a lot between several locations at once. But war can get chaotic, and sometimes that needs to be captured in more ways than one. Next time we're going to be really in the thick of it as this outbreak of violence spreads out to our other teams and Minato himself. Speaking of which, I wonder who it was that Minato and Orochimaru were whispering about, Don't forget about the Mystery Ninja, where Jiraiya is, or how the Chunin exams will fit into this story. That's all going to be answered in due time. Until then though, the sky's the limit.